So let me go ahead and introduce our speaker. So we're really happy to have Jonathan back with us. Jonathan Elizondo is an experienced Costa Rican EFL professional who devotes his time and energy seeking ways to enhance his students' learning processes. He's especially interested in exploring the impact of technology in the English classroom, and specifically in using technologies to improve students' language skills. This has led him to present in different conferences in Costa Rica, Peru, Panama, Venezuela, and the Dominican Republic. Jonathan holds an MA in teaching English as a foreign language and a BA in primary education with emphasis in English language teaching from the University of Costa Rica. He also holds a licenciate degree and bachelor's degree in English teaching from Universidad Americana and a certification as a TESOL teacher from the SIT Graduate Institute in Vermont. And at present, he works for the Ministry of Public Education at Centro de Capacitación en Educación a Distancia in Universidad Estatal a Distancia, and as an international speaking examiner for Cambridge Assessment English. And a thought that Jonathan strongly identifies with is Albert Einstein's quote, "I never teach my pupils, I only provide the conditions in which they can learn." So here to speak with us today with the presentation, Enhancing Learner Autonomy and Meaningful Learning in the 21st Century, please help me welcome Professor Jonathan Elizondo with a warm virtual round of applause.
Thank you very
Camera's
much,
open.
Mark. Thank you very much. Thank you for that great presentation and for having me back. I'm always glad to be here. As Mark said, I'm a frequent member of the PD Talks and the National Conference for Teachers of English as well. And it's always a pleasure to be here with you. So today we're going to be talking about enhancing learner autonomy and meaningful learning in the 21st century. And I would really like for you to keep your chat open because we're going to be using it frequently. If you've been in one of my previous sessions, usually the tool I tend to use is Mentimeter for participation, but for this particular talk, we're going to be using the chat. And I would like to read your ideas and comments in the chat. If at some point your questions are related to what I'm talking at that moment, I'm going to be addressing them immediately. Otherwise, one of the people, probably Mark or Jonathan, are going to be recording the questions, and we can talk about that in the Q&A session at the end, okay? So let's see our agenda for today. And again, don't worry, because you're going to have all the materials for this talk. You're going to have everything is going to be given to you in PDF. You can download it later. You can visit the Community of Practice website and see the recording as well. So hopefully you're going to devote your time to pay attention, participate, and collaborate with one another. So we're going to be looking at 21st century skills very briefly and very kind of just taking a look at what 21st century skills are about. We're going to talk about the need to shift the way we teach, or the way we used to teach up to a certain point in history. We're going to see the model, which is the 21st CLD. This is a very interesting model that I came across recently. I know it's not that new, but I came across this model and I really liked it as a way of improving the way I teach and kind of aligning my teaching with the needs of the 21st century world, okay? And then we're going to try to apply that model in our breakout rooms towards the end of the session, okay? So let's start by looking at 21st century skills, and I want to read you in the chat, what do you know about 21st century skills? What have you heard? What are the skills that we talk about when we talk or when we say 21st century skills? Which is your favorite, or maybe you don't know anything about that. It's the first time you're hearing about it. Whatever answer you have, I would really like to read that in the chat. So please feel free to go into the chat and tell us what do you know about 21st century skills? What have you heard about it? Digital writing, ICT skills, question mark, digital literacy, creativity, use of ICTs. Aha. 21st CLD has a six modules, I believe. I'm not sure. Okay. Critical thinking, collaboration, life skills, technology, communication, soft skills, technology abilities, communication, critical thinking, how to adapt. Thank you very much. Great answers. And I would like to say that all of these that you're saying in different words, all of them relate to 21st century skills. So let me show you 4 different ways in which we can actually see the 21st century skills. The first one I'm going to refer to has to do with the Costa Rican context. And this is the 4 dimensions that we used in Ministry of Public Education nowadays. Since 2015, we started what we call the Curricular Transformation. And basically in the Curricular Transformation, there are different skills that we need to incorporate in our classes and in our classrooms that have to do with these 4 dimensions. So we talk about ways of thinking, and basically this has to do with the cognitive part of our students, how we develop that cognition in our students and how we help them to construct their own knowledge. Then we look at ways of living in the world, and this is basically how we relate with others. Here we have soft skills, we have emotional intelligence. And so how is it that we relate with other people? Then we have ways of relating with others and tools for integrating with the world, which is basically technology or ICTs. Now, this is the way we are looking at 21st century skills in Costa Rica. This is another way to look at the 21st century skills. These are 5 different aspects. And so we'll look for creativity and innovation, and we're going to get a little bit into more detail on some of the concepts a little later. Then we'll look at communication and collaboration. We'll look at research and information. We'll look at digital citizenship. And I'm sorry, I repeated research and information again. It's actually 4 of them. Now, the one I like the most is what we call the 4 C's of the 21st century. And it's basically creativity, which is innovation and personal expression, how we find different solutions to problems that we might have. That is creativity. How do you create something different? Collaboration, or working with and leading others to solve problems. So how do we collaborate with others? And you see that these are 4 C's because all of them begin with a C. Then we have critical thinking, and this is the ability to gather, analyze, and interpret information to solve problems. And the last C that we have is communication. And in here, we're looking at listening, presenting, and public speaking. I'm sorry because I just noticed 2 typos in this slide. I am deeply sorry about that. So the idea with these 4 and the why I like them is because I think this is actually what our world needs from us nowadays. We need people who are creative and who can communicate their ideas, but also people who can think critically, who don't conform to whatever they are told and they are said, who look for different ways, interpret the information, analyze, go or dig deeper into the topics they are interested in. And finally, collaboration, which is working with others. I really like one phrase, and I always keep this phrase in mind when I teach about collaboration or when I talk to teachers about collaboration. And it's Franklin Chang's words. Franklin Chang is a Costa Rican astronaut, actually the first Costa Rican astronaut. And Franklin Chan always said, nobody gets anywhere without the help of other people. And so basically that's it. Nowadays, in the 21st century, we look for collaboration. It's very interesting because when I work at the university, every time more and more, I hear students, and when I was a student taking my last degree a couple of years ago, I remember listening to my classmates complaining about collaboration, and they said, why is it that I have to work in groups? I don't like to work in groups. I want to work individually. Why is it that in every single course they ask me to work in groups and to create things in collaboration? Well, because that's one of the demands of the 21st century. That's what companies are looking for, people who can actually work with one another, people who can collaborate and who can look for the solution to different problems, not in isolation, but as a group. Okay. So now that we know a little bit, or that we refreshed our beliefs about the 21st century and the skills that are needed nowadays, we're going to go into why we need to shift the way we teach. And let me just make sure that I am sharing sound here with you, because here we have a video. This is a 6-minute video. We're going to watch the whole video. While we watch the video, I want you to pay attention to the video and try to answer this question. Are we doing things differently from what we see in the video? Okay. And then I want you to share in the chat anything that resonates with you, any similarities or differences. You say, oh, that is very similar. What he just said in the video, it's really similar. Or what changes do we need to make? Okay, so any of these things, are we doing things differently from the video or from what the video presents? What resonates to you? What similarities or differences we find? And then what changes do we need to make according to the video, okay, or from your experience? Probably you have watched this video before. I really like it because I'm going to tell you why after we watch the video and I see your ideas. Okay, so let's watch the video. All right, so I'm here, I'm reading here some of your ideas. And I hear, or I read here, Ukenta says everyone with the same instrument. Well, I agree with that. Unfortunately, when we have 30 students in a classroom and we have to do so many things more than just assessing, it's very difficult to use different instruments with 30 students, right? Have students self-assess their work. I really like that idea. We need to explore that a little bit more, because many people don't believe into self-assessing, but that is part of self-regulation that we're actually going to be talking about today. Collaboration versus competition is an idea that resonates with me, sir, said Mark. And I agree with that. That's actually one of the phrases that really kept me thinking. Are we, in our classrooms, are we helping our students to collaborate, or are we asking them to compete? Because we're always measuring the grades and who is better at what, okay? Then each student is different with different needs and abilities. Definitely, those are some of the things we need to consider. We have to implement changes on evaluations, definitely. Thank you for those ideas. Passive versus active learning. What is is there a difference? Or are we making that difference happen? Like, are we having still passive students versus active students? What do we prefer? Active students should be the answer, right? Standardized testing can be so painful for certain students. Yes, and we still have them. We need to foster more creativity. Thank you very much for those ideas. Great. The classroom looks the same to the ones we had in the past. They must be improved, definitely. Still, we go into certain classrooms where teachers have group work and they have pair work, but still in many classes, I work in a school with 37 groups, I guess, and I haven't counted them, but I am pretty sure if I go one by one, probably more than half of the classrooms are going to be in a row sitting mode, right? One student behind the other, everybody trying to be quiet and teachers asking them to be quiet, okay? Very good. Thank you very much for those ideas. So we need to change. And that's basically what you're also telling me in the chat. We need to change. So how can we change this? And then for us to understand what we're going to see today, the 21st CLD, we need to learn, or we need to understand that we need a learner-centered pedagogy. That's the first change we need to make. In the past and still in the present, teachers are the center of education, or in many cases, teachers are the center of education. But we need to shift that into learner-centered pedagogy. How can we do that? Well, personalization. What you were saying about the evaluations, maybe doing self-evaluation, or instead of doing one evaluation for every student, giving them options in the way we evaluate them. Do you want to do this, this, or that? I don't know. Let's say I'm going to evaluate oral production. So in the UDL, thank you for sharing that, Perla. The universal design for learning, definitely, that allows for personalization as well, and for everybody to be included in the equation, okay? Now, if I am going to ask my students to create or do an oral presentation, is it necessary that they do it in front of the class, or can I do it can I give them some freedom? Do you want to do it in front of your class? Do you want to record your voice? Do you want to record a video? What do you want to do? How do you feel more comfortable? And that is somehow personalization. I am still evaluating my student on the speaking skill, but I am personalizing based on your ideas and on your preferences. We need to add more collaboration. So no students competing against each other. It's very interesting because this past year I taught second graders, and we were in a bimodal modality. So some days students used to come to school, some days they were at home. But the thing is that when we were at school, if I gave them a worksheet to work on, they were actually competing. And I didn't tell them to do that, but they were always saying, I finished. No, I finished first. No, but yours were incorrect. Mine was correct. So they were competing instead of collaborating with each other. So we need more collaboration in the classroom. And we also need to make sure our students are building their knowledge, and it's not that we are depositing our knowledge into their minds. And of course, there needs to be self-regulation. There is an entire talk we did I did in the past on self-regulation, and that was last year. But there's a lot on self-regulation that you can find online, and it's basically the ability students have to make decisions on their own and evaluate what they are doing to make changes, okay? Then we have extended learning. That is the second thing that needs to change. And here we need problem-solving activities. So it's not giving everything as a recipe, like this is the thing you need to do. It's more problem-solving. And we need 24/7 learning opportunities. We can give our students an assignment, let's say, and then you decide when do you want to do it, not necessarily in the classroom. What happens many times is that students work in the classroom and then they have no interest whatsoever or no motivation many times to go into those learning opportunities outside the classroom. And also, we need to provide global and cultural understanding. Mostly we that are teaching a foreign language or a second language in some cases, we need to make sure our students understand the culture behind that language, and not only with one country, but with all the countries in which that language is spoken. And of course, innovative ICT. This is the topic I have liked for a long time, using ICT in the classroom. So we need to embed the ICT in the activities that we have in the classroom. So we incorporate ICTs in everything we do in the classroom, or as much as possible. And then we can use ICTs at a high level, meaning we don't want our students only to receive information from ICTs, like, I don't know, watching a video or listening to a lecture, but we also want them to use ICTs for learning. We want them to create blogs, create videos, create posts, create podcasts, all of those different things, okay? So that is definitely what we need to change. Now, what is the 21st century learning design? I decided to show you this other video. This is just 2 minutes. And the 21st century design comes from Microsoft Learning. And basically what we have is 6 different dimensions that we're going to be exploring in the classroom. And these dimensions are related to what employers have said people need in the 21st century. What are those skills that people need to develop and to put into practice, okay? So let's watch this short video about the 21st century learning design, and then we're going to get into detail on the design.
Hello! My name is Becky Keene. I'm an educator from the Seattle area of the United States. I'm so glad you're here with me to learn about 21st century learning design. Throughout this series, I'll be here to guide you, challenge you, and encourage you as we begin to understand how to make learning experiences that best prepare our learners for their futures. The learning methodology is research-based best practice, coming from a global study from SRI International, using surveys, interviews, observations, activity analysis, and learner focus groups to identify innovative teaching practices that positively impact achievement and future-ready skills. The published ITL report identifies practicing a new teaching method as the most impactful change an educator can make to apply deep learning and skills. So I'm thrilled that you're here to learn more about how to grow in your practice. And I hope that you will journey with me toward creating new experiences your learners will never forget. 21st Century Learning Design, or 21CLD, is made up of 6 learning dimensions, developed to help educators design thoughtful and effective learning activities. Each learning dimension contains a rubric to self-evaluate learning activities and ultimately help educators evolve lesson plans. The rubrics also provide learning teams with a shared understanding and common language to describe the skills we want our learners to practice. Our goal is for educators to use the resources and rubrics contained in these modules to design activities that help learners develop key skills for living and working in the 21st century. Our young people are growing up in a rapidly evolving, globalized society. Thanks to the internet, vast amounts of information are released daily. Our emphasis as educators in this age is no longer just about knowing information, but also how to access, interpret, analyze, and evaluate it. Besides the information explosion, our world is also facing many challenges. This ever-changing world will require our children to solve complex problems that can't be fixed by looking in a textbook or taking a standardized test. Fixed solutions and jobs for life are things of the past. It is our job as educators to ensure that our young people become resilient, lifelong learners with the flexibility to adapt in a dynamic and fast-paced world. 21CLD provides a collaborative, practice-based process that transforms the way educators design enriching learning activities. So, to begin, I encourage you.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there because now she starts talking about each of the modules. But basically, thank you, Noemi, for that question. I'm going to share not only the link with you, but also a website in which you can actually explore a little further into the 21st century learning design. I want to clarify again that this design I came across in a course I was taking, and then I got so interested because I noticed that it was really easy for me to put into practice, and I started looking at it into more into detail. And what I like is that no matter what I'm doing in the classroom, no matter what program I'm following or guidelines that I follow, for example, at the Ministry of Public Education here, we have certain guidelines and certain structures, let's say, that we need to follow in our classes. Right now, we're using action-oriented approach with task-based learning. And what I like is that I can continue using that is demanded from me, but I can use the 21st CLD and make my classes more appealing and try to make them aligned with the new methodologies and all the things that organizations and companies are requiring people to, because I want my students to develop those skills. Okay, so the 21st CLD has 6 different dimensions. We have knowledge construction, we have collaboration, we have skilled communication, problem solving and innovation, self-regulation, and ICT for learning. Now, what you can do with this design is basically you can incorporate all of them at once, Or you can say, okay, I'm going to start little by little. I'm going to look at this lesson that I have prepared, and I'm going to try to focus on the knowledge construction aspect or dimension. And then using a rubric, I'm going to improve my lesson plan just for knowledge construction. Then another day I can say, okay, I'm going to do both knowledge construction and collaboration. I'm going to look at the rubric and I'm going to try to improve my lesson plan and my lesson based on those two dimensions. So what we're doing is basically helping our students develop those 6 different skills that are needed for the future from our lessons by taking simple steps. So let's go and explore each of them. I have organized them based on my own interest. This might not be the organization provided in the design itself, but it's the one I found most, the one I like the most, okay? And the one I found most logical in my opinion. So knowledge construction. In knowledge construction, we talk about knowledge construction in terms of 4 different aspects. Interpretation, which is basically drawing inferences beyond literal meaning. So we want our students to interpret what they receive. We don't want them to only get everything that is literal. We want them to analyze, which is basically identify the parts of a whole and their relationships. So they take one whole thing, they put it into different sections, they get it into different parts, and then they say, okay, part A is related to part B because of this and this and that. We want them to be able to synthesize, and it's identifying the relationships between different ideas. And of course, we want them to be able to evaluate, which is judging the quality, the credibility, and the importance of everything they get. Now, you might see why is it that I really like this design, because this is actually what we are hearing more and more every day. We're hearing universities saying we get students from high school who are not able to evaluate, who cannot synthesize, who are not able to analyze, who cannot interpret. And so our idea is if we use things like this design, we can actually go step by step, helping our students develop knowledge construction. Now let's look at the criteria. So basically with this, again, it's nothing that you have to modify from or start from scratch. You can take one lesson you have and you start modifying that lesson, okay, based on the criteria. So let's look at the criteria. First, we need to look at knowledge construction, and we say, okay, this activity that I have or this task that I have for my student requires knowledge construction. And for you to know, these criteria will get me from levels or from levels 1 to level 5 in some cases, or level 1 to level 4 in some other cases, or what they call the codes, okay? So it requires knowledge construction. If the answer is no, this is code 1. What is knowledge construction? Well, sometimes we ask our students to they already know grammar, and we have an activity in which they have to complete a worksheet with the grammar they already know. Do they require knowledge construction for that particular worksheet? No, what they require is to put their knowledge into practice, but they are not constructing anything different. So in that case, with that particular activity, I am in code 1, or the first level of knowledge construction. If the answer is yes, it requires knowledge construction, then we have another question. The main requirement for this activity is knowledge construction, or the main requirement is something else. If the answer is no, the main requirement is not knowledge construction, we are in level 2 or code 2. If the answer is yes, we have another question. Do learners apply their knowledge in a new context? So my activity requires knowledge construction. The main requirement is knowledge construction. Do they have to apply this knowledge in a different context? If the answer is no, we are in code number 3. If the answer is yes, we go into one more question. Learning activity. Is it interdisciplinary? Meaning, do I have or do they have to put into practice what they are learning in other subjects? I teach English as a foreign language. Do students need to put into practice something related to math or science or social studies or Spanish, let's say? So if the answer is no, that is code 4. If the answer is yes, that is code 5. So what we want is, you see that we can go from the very basic, which is no knowledge construction at all, to many different codes that allow my students to construct their knowledge, deeper and deeper construction of knowledge. Now, I'm going to show you one idea that I have, and this is an activity that we can do in our classes. And I want you to use the chat to tell me in what code do you think this activity belongs, or what code should we locate this activity? So this is with a 3rd grade group. And what I do is the teacher provides several activities where students play with vocabulary to learn rooms in the house. So this can be, they might watch a video, then they have memory games, then they have a worksheet. So different activities, and they start playing with the vocabulary, charades, etc. So they learn rooms in the house. After that, they need to imagine that they are going to sell a house, and they have to create a house plan and share it with their classmates. Now, when they share with their classmates, when they share the house plan, this is the house I'm going to sell, they need to use there is and there are, which they learned in the previous lesson. So looking at the description, very quick description here, what code will you locate this? And I see here like code 3, code 3, code 3. Many people saying code 3, code 4, Patricia, code 3. The majority of people say code 3. Okay, now let me tell you my interpretation of this regarding the codes. I would say this is code 4. Why? Because my students are learning something new. It requires knowledge. Then there is one requirement is to know something. I want them to learn or to construct knowledge on rooms in the house, okay? Now, when I ask them to imagine that they will sell the house and create a plan to share with somebody, that is applying their knowledge in a different context, is not applying the knowledge in the classroom context. Again, here, or you can see here, we are with 3rd grade students. So basically, what we are doing here with 3rd grade students is at their level. We are imagining. It's just imaginative, okay? So you see that here, I just took it to code number 4. If I wanted to make it to code number 5, I could have added something else. I don't know, something related to math, or I could talk to the teacher in social studies or science and see if there is any relationship between what I am teaching and what they are learning in that class to make sure that the activity is interdisciplinary. But up here, I am taking it only to code number 4. Again, with 3rd graders, I cannot do more than just imagine that you are going to do this. It's different than, okay, create a lesson plan and share it in the classroom with your classmates. It's classroom activity. They are not applying the knowledge in anything else. Now, I see Lynn is worried about knowing the sales vocabulary. Well, Lynn, with this activity, I am not worried about that because what I want is my students to be able to share the house. So let's imagine you're selling the house. Here are your buyers and you want to share the plan of the house. This is the house. There is a bathroom. There are 2 bedrooms. There is a kitchen next to the, I don't know, to the patio, etc. So what they are using is what they already know. If you want them to use some sales vocabulary, you can provide them with certain prompts, right, for them to use. So that is basically the criteria for knowledge. And again, we can incorporate knowledge with other dimensions, or we can say, no, I'm going to focus only in knowledge. And I came across this last year. It was kind of in October, I think the mid of October, when I came across this model and this design. And what I said was, okay, I'm going to start little by little. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start like today, I'm just going to focus my class today. I'm going to try to take knowledge construction to a different level. Let's first evaluate what level my activity is at. And can I make something different for it to improve? And then in a different lesson, I went with a different dimension and so on and so forth. And then it starts becoming easier and easier. Let's look at the next dimension, which is collaboration. So in collaboration, we want our students to work together. Now, something important, we want them to discuss, we want them to solve problems, and we want them to create something. It's not just one working together like everybody in a group and then they are filling out a form or they are completing a worksheet and everybody is quiet. No, we need them to be doing these three things or any of these three things. There is a shared responsibility in collaboration. So basically, they need to develop something in common. They are thinking about there is a problem or there is an issue and they need to develop something all together. And in the end, what they are going to have is one product, okay? They need to make substantive decisions. And here we have decisions in terms of the content they are putting, the process, and the product. Again, now here you might be saying, well, if I have first or second graders, how am I going to do collaboration with substantive decision? There are certain ways in which at their level, I can allow them to choose something about the content or the process or the product they're going to present. And then there needs to be interdependent work. What is interdependent work? It's this work in which I am accountable for my work, but we are also accountable for the whole group, okay? So it's not, Mark, you're going to do part A, Jonathan, you do part B, and Jonathan Acuna, you do part C, and then we put it together. No, we can start from there, but then we have to discuss, we have to make the process, and we have to create something all together. Now, if you're wondering, am I using collaboration as much as possible in my classroom? Here is the criteria. Let's look at this. So first question, do students work in pairs or group? If the answer is no, that is code 1. Definitely no collaboration at all. If the answer is yes, I have another question. Do students share responsibility or is everybody working just on their own? If the answer is no, they are not sharing responsibility, we are in code number 2. If the answer is yes, there is a new question. Do students make substantive decisions? Are they able to decide on what they are doing? If the answer is no, code 3, or yes, is there student interdependence? Do students depend on one another? Am I accountable for my learning? And are we accountable for the group learning and the group progress? Code 4, if the answer is no, or code 5, if the answer is yes. Once again, I have here a scenario and I want you to try to code it. Students, and this is for 3rd grade, okay? Students work in small groups to complete several activities where they play with vocabulary to learn rooms in the house. So again, we're on the same idea of rooms in the house. After a while, they need to imagine they will sell a house and have to create a house plan in a worksheet provided by the teacher. There is a worksheet provided by the teacher and share it with the classmates using there is or there are, which they learned in previous lesson. So in what code will you put this activity? Is it code 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? I see here code 5. Let's see. Code 5. Okay. Many people saying code 5, code 4. Teacher resources are very important to get students in the context. Code 4. All right, code 5. Okay. I'm going to give you my opinion about this activity. In here, I would say it's probably code 3. Why? Because let's look at number 1. Students work in pairs or groups? Yes. Okay. Code number 2. Students share responsibility. Yes, they are working in groups. They have to put a plan together. Do students make substantive decisions? I don't think they do a lot of substantive decisions because of the fact that it says they need to create a plan in a worksheet provided by the teacher. So it seems to be a lot of control from the teacher. If we were to do it as we did in the knowledge, that it says just students create a plan and they share with their classmates, they have to make a lot of decisions. But in here, the teacher gives them probably the plan already made, and what they have to do is just put the names of the rooms, and then use there is and there are. So there is not much room to what vocabulary they're going to use. They just need, the teacher says you need to use vocabulary for rooms of the house, and you need to use vocabulary related to there is and there are, which you already know. Okay. So Pedro, you are right. Maybe to create their dream house gives them more freedom. So as a group, you're going to create a dream house, discuss, work together. Then you're going to share with everybody else, but work together, make all the decisions you want to make. And then probably they will start asking more questions, not only the vocabulary the teacher provided, but teacher, how do you say this? How do you say that? I want to express this. Can I do that? Sure, of course. I guide you as the teacher, but then I go more into code 4 or code 5. But for me, this particular activity is more code number 3. Okay. Students share responsibility, Mark. In that case, the difference, students share responsibilities, basically they are all working towards an outcome. Now, what happens with student interdependence is actually what you were mentioning before in the chat regarding collaboration and cooperation. So the difference is that with student interdependence, we make sure that everybody is accountable for the whole group and everybody is accountable on their own. Sharing responsibility can be just cooperation. So we all share responsibility on a certain part of our work. You do your work, I do my work, we put it together, we share it with the teacher, and then it is a Frankenstein. But if we want collaboration, we need that interdependence. I am accountable for my learning, but also the whole group is accountable for everything we are doing in the group. That would be the difference in that case. Now we go into problem solving and innovation, which is another area or another dimension. Now here, what we want is students to develop a solution to a problem. So there is a problem, they need to develop a solution. They need to complete a task they haven't been instructed how to do. So I don't tell them how to do it. I just tell them you need to do this. You decide how to do it. They need to design probably a complex product. Again, this complexity part is going to depend on the student's level. If they are first graders, that complexity for us, maybe it's not that complex, but for them is really complex. Whereas if I'm teaching 11th graders in high school, they might, my activity might be a little complex to me and also to the students. Now, to be able to do that problem solving, develop the solution, complete the task, and design the product, they probably need to investigate, they need to generate ideas, design a solution, and test the solution. And there are two more requisites here. Number one is that this needs to be a real world problem, and there needs to be innovation. Now, by innovation here, we mean students need to put into practice what they designed. If they don't put anything into practice, that is not innovation. That is the idea of innovation in this particular dimension. It's, I have the idea, I put it into practice, and I evaluate whether or not it works. Let's look again at the rubric. So number one, the main requirement is problem solving. So I have an activity. Is the main requirement of this activity to solve a problem? No, code 1. Yes, okay, next question. Do learners work on a real world problem, or are they working on something that doesn't relate to the real world? Now, when we talk about the real world problem, it doesn't mean that it's that doesn't have to be something imaginative. Again, it can be something that within the classroom, we're going to imagine you are members of this committee and you have to do this and this and that. Now, that problem that they are imagining, is that a real world problem? Is that something that they might face when they go out of the classroom? Well, even though we're working in the classroom, yes. Now, if the answer to this is no, code 2, yes. Does it require innovation? No, code 3, or yes, code 4. So you see that this particular part of problem solving only has 4 codes. This dimension has only 4 codes. Now let's look at the example, and I want you to share. This is 5th grade from elementary school. Students are learning about the environment. The teacher addresses that there is a problem with many students not using waste baskets or garbage cans in the school. Students need to work as a group to come up with a plan to attack the problem and present it to the teacher as a final project. What code would you say this is? Is this code 1, code 2, code 3, or code 4? Now here you see that I am somehow doing that interdisciplinary part. We're learning about the environment, but probably I can mix this with science, the subject of science. So if we go back to the knowledge construction, we can analyze this same activity with knowledge construction. I see here 2, 3, 4, 3, 3, 2, 4, code 2. Okay, so let's see. Is the main requirement solving a problem? Yes. So we go to the second question. Do learners work on a real world problem? Yes, it's a problem that is happening at school. Many people not using garbage cans. So then we go to the next one. Does it require innovation? Okay. If you see that, it says, come up with a plan to attack the problem and present the plan to the teacher. So they are not innovating. They are not putting they are not putting it into practice. So Jose Raul, you're right. It might also be code 3 if they don't put it into practice. So for me, this one is code 3. What can be code 4? Let's imagine that my students say, okay, teacher, we can start like part of the project that we developed, and that is the presentation. Okay, they present it to the teacher and they say, okay, teacher, we are going to create posters. We're going to visit classrooms. We're going to tell people about the importance. We're going to look for funds to put more garbage cans around the school because that is one of the problems. We don't have enough and we want to have them. So Mark, yes, innovation equals application. In that case, the teacher at that moment says, okay, that's great. Let's put that into practice. Let's create the posters. Let's put them around. Let's visit some classrooms. That would be code 4. Students are putting what they put into paper, they put it into action. They apply it, and then we can say, okay, how did it go? Did we learn from this activity? What did we learn? Did we like it? So you see that actually my students are going beyond learning. Again, here I am thinking about my students learning the language related to vocabulary, how to talk to people, or maybe how to give some commands like don't, or put the garbage in the basket, don't litter, different phrases that they can create. And I'm teaching that, and then they use that to address a real problem in their school. Then we have self-regulation. Okay, now give me just one moment. With self-regulation, it's basically self-generated thoughts, feelings, and actions that are planned and critically adapted to the attainment of personal goals. So this is the concept of self-regulation. I have different feelings, different ideas, different actions that I plan and that I adapt depending on my needs to attain personal goals. So Zimmerman proposes this model. Basically, I plan a strategy and I say, okay, I need to learn, I need to learn the present perfect. So what is the best way to learn the present perfect? I'm going to start creating sentences like every Saturday. I'm going to think about what I did during the week and I'm going to try to come up with ideas like, okay, this week I have gone to the bank. This week I have studied this week. All right. That is the planning. Then I execute the plan and I self-reflect. Did it work? It didn't work. No, it didn't work. I'm going to come up with a different plan. I'm going to adapt the plan. Okay. In my, like, some part of this skill, which is self-regulation in real life, I am a person in I always tell everybody, I'm always on the rush. I like to live at the limit. So if I have a presentation, and that is something I struggle with. If I have a presentation tomorrow, I will probably tomorrow morning be working on the presentation, because that's the way I have worked for many years. Now, this is not ideal. This is not what I want. So what I did is I started planning, and I said, okay, you know what? I really need to have this agenda, this to-do, create to-do lists. That is going to be my plan. Then I executed that, and I came to reflect, and I say, okay, it works. But it works only if I really sit down and I write my to-do list the day before, and I look at my calendar and I plan ahead. It really works. So I'm going to make sure now, my next part in the planning again, I'm going to make sure every day I sit down, I plan, and then I continue with the model. So this is self-regulation in my real life, not only for learning, okay? Now, if we want to teach self-regulation, this is the criteria. The activity that we're planning, is this an activity that is a long-term activity? And do I give my students learning goals and success criteria in advance? Because they need to know what I am looking for, what I want from them, but also they need to set clear expectations. This is what is required from me. This is what I need to do, okay? Let me tell you that, for example, at UNED, we work with distance education, and we talk always about self-regulation. So this is something we do with our students. When they register into a class or a course, they register into a course, they receive all the plan, and this is usually 35, 40 pages long, because every activity is well planned, and it says, okay, this is the objective for this activity, this is the time frame for this activity, this is what we expect for you, and this is the criteria by which you're going to be evaluated. Now, if the answer to this question is no, you're not providing this, that is code 1. If the answer is yes, can learners plan their own work? So again, at UNED, we are telling our students, this is what you have to do during the term. These are the due dates, but you plan your own work. You decide when you're going to work, when is it that you're going to read your materials, etc. So if the answer is no, my learners cannot plan their work, that's code 2. My learners can plan their work. Do they have the opportunity to revise their work afterwards? No. Or yes, that is code 4. This revision usually happens after some feedback. So I provide my students with some feedback, and then they can revise what they did right, what they can improve, and they go ahead again into that model provided by Zimmerman, and they say, okay, this is what I'm going to correct into my plan. I'm going to do it again, and hopefully I get there. Let's look at this example, and this is with adults learner. This is an activity we did in a research course at the university. Students at the major of ELT are asked to complete a Webquest on the topic of academic writing. So a Webquest is basically, they are provided with a lot of steps to carry out a research somehow, or let's say it's somehow a research on a topic. During their journey, they are provided with clear objectives, steps, and a rubric on how they will be evaluated. Students have to decide whether they make a podcast or instructional video to present what they learned throughout their quest. Learners have 2 weeks to complete the task. Now, what code will you give in terms of self-regulation? I see code 2, code 3, code 3, code 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, code 2. Well, again, my perspective here, this is a code 3. Is it a long-term activity? Yes, they have 2 weeks to complete. It's somehow long-term. Do they have learning goals? Yes. It says that during the journey, they are provided with clear objectives, steps, and a rubric. So everything in the first criteria is met. Yes. Do they plan their own work? Yes, because they have to decide whether they create a podcast or an instructional video. They make the planning for that. Do they have the opportunity to revise? Unfortunately, here it doesn't say, okay? It seems that they just create a podcast, the instructional video, they present it to the teacher, and that's it. The teacher evaluates. There's no revision on the plan. Whereas if there were another step that says after the teacher revises for the first time, students can make change before they get evaluated for for good. In that case, that would be code 4. But in this case, we're only allowing the students to that code 3. They are not able to revise after we give them feedback, okay? And they cannot make any changes after that. They finish and that's it, okay? Now, ICT for learning. And here, regarding ICT, I just want to look at 2 concepts because in the past years, we have been bombarded with a lot of information about ICTs and what to use, what not to use, etc. So I just want to look at 2 different ideas here. Number 1 is the idea of learning from ICTs, which is basically students are getting, or I am using ICTs in the classroom for students to receive ICTs, information and communication technology. Thank you, Rolando, for your question. Information and communication technologies, all the technologies that we can use that are, or that were originally intended to communicate, right? And to inform other people. Now, learning from ICTs is basically, I am a passive learner. I receive a lot of information that comes from ICT, but I don't do anything with the ICT. So I receive videos, the teacher provides like these kind of sessions that we're having right now where I am just listening to the teacher, etc., okay? The teacher gives me a document, or maybe it is an interactive book that I am reading online, but I am receiving all the information. And then we have learning with ICT. Learning with ICT is totally opposite. It's students taking action in the ICT. Students are using the ICT to actually create their learning, okay? Now, here, I'm sorry that I provided you with that one. I forgot to make the transition. Now, learners have the opportunity to use the ICT. No, that is code 1. Or yes, ICT supports learner knowledge construction. That is the second question. So if I allow my students to use the ICT, then my next question is, does ICT support the knowledge construction? Are they learning by using the ICT? No, that is code number 2. Or yes, is ICT required for constructing knowledge? No, that is code 3. Or yes, are the learners designers of the ICT product? So do they design a product on their own? No, code 4, or yes, code 5. So now we have the same scenario as before. Students at the major are asked to complete a Webquest on the topic of academic writing. Now, this is online. During the journey, they are provided with the objective steps, rubrics. The students have to decide whether they make a blog. I am including the blog, right? A blog, a podcast, or instructional video to present what they have learned throughout their quest. Learners have 2 weeks to complete the task. In what of the codes will you put this activity? Again, you see that I am using the same activity for 2 different dimensions, for the part of self-regulation and for the use of ICTs. And I see a lot of code 5, code 5, code 5. Many people seem to agree, and I agree too. This is code 5. You see that my students use ICT. Yes, they go online, they receive or they visit different websites, etc. Now, does ICT support learner construction? Yes. The idea of a Webquest is that students are going to create their knowledge or build their knowledge based on materials provided by the teacher. But maybe I provided them with 5 different websites and they only visited 3. That's their decision because they are clear with those 3 and that's enough for them. Or maybe they need to visit the 5 different websites. Now, is ICT required for constructing knowledge? Yes. If they don't use ICT, they're not going to be able to carry out the task. And do they design the product? Definitely. They need to make a blog, a podcast, or instructional video to present what they learned through their quest. So in this case, that is code 5. That is the maximum level of ICT use that we can have according to the 21st CLD. Okay. And the last one is skilled communication. I promise you this is the last thing before you go into breakout rooms and put everything you've been hearing and looking at into practice on your own. Now, skilled communication, the idea with skilled communication is that we need people who are able to communicate. And we see that that is an issue nowadays. Many people who cannot share their ideas, share their thoughts, or they cannot do it effectively, they are not assertive. So what do we need in terms of communication? Okay, for communication to be called skilled communication needs to be extended. So if I only share, my name is Jonathan, that is not skilled communication. That is really basic communication because it's not extended farther than a simple sentence or just one idea. It needs to be multimodal, meaning that I have to use different modes. I can use video, text, I can use audio, etc. So this needs to be multimodal, different modes of sharing. I need to support evidence. So when I am talking during this presentation, you see that I tell you, okay, this 21st CLD was created by these people. I show you a video that supports with evidence. They took it from a research that was well supported. I have provided different quotes and different sources as well on where I'm taking my ideas. And then design for a particular audience. Definitely. This talk, for example, is designed for English teachers, either information or in-service English teachers. Even though we have some people who say, I am here because I really want to learn because I can apply this into my work, but originally this was designed for a particular audience. Now, this is skilled communication. What is the rubric for skilled communication? Number 1, is this communication extended or multimodal? No, that is code 1. Yes, that is code 2. Does it provide evidence? And now this one is a little bit trickier because does the person provide evidence? No. Then I need to ask another question. Is it designed for a particular audience? No. That is code 2. So you see that before going to code 2, I need to ask 2 questions, which answer is no. Then I say, okay, is it designed for a particular, is it provided, does it provide evidence? No. Is it designed for a particular audience? Yes, that is code 3. Now, if it provides evidence, I ask, is it designed for a particular audience? No, that is code 3, or yes, that is code 4, okay? So you see that here we have to play with both particular audience, okay? This is an activity for high school students. Students work in small groups. They do some research using trustworthy sources about ways to lessen hunger around the world and prepare a blog with written information and video about their findings. This blog is addressed to people who can fund a project students want to embark on. So I am thinking here more into integrating many of the dimensions, collaboration, problem solving, etc. Where will you put this activity? What code is it? Is it code 1, 2, 3, or 4? Okay, I see many code 4. Great. Code 4. Great. Yes, I think this is code 4 because extended or multimodal, yes, they need to do video. It says that video and written information. Do they need to provide evidence? Yes, because this is from trustworthy sources. So they need to provide evidence. Is it designed for a particular audience? Yes, they need to think it's people who can give them money to fund a project they want to embark on. So that is code number 4. You see that this is an activity that will probably take not only 80 minutes or 40 minutes in my class. And again, I can take these, if I take this activity and I apply the rubric for technology, for ICTs, or I apply the rubric for collaboration, and then I can say, well, in small groups, and then what are the other things of collaboration? Because I want to take it farther into every single dimension. And this is a great activity. I think if we look at all the different dimensions and all the rubrics, we can make an amazing activity that fulfills all the codes for every single dimension. All right, so now it's time for you to collaborate with one another. And this is a collaborative task. So you are going to be sent into, okay, Lourdes, let me go back and try to clarify that, sorry. Okay, it says that I got confused in this one because you didn't provide evidence. Okay, by provided evidence is the students, okay? I am thinking about the students. Number one, extended or multimodal. Did the students use extended communication or multimodal? Yes. Did they provide evidence? Yes, because I'm asking them to do some research using trustworthy sources in order to create their ideas on lesson hunger around the world. So they cannot say, oh, my idea is that by donating $1, each person will do this and this and that. Though they need to say, according to this and this and that, according to this website, or we found here that this is a way in which we can do that. No, it's not the teacher who provides evidence, is the person who is communicating. If the person provides evidence, that is skilled communication. Thank you, because that's a great question to clarify. Collaborative task. So you're going to be sent into breakout rooms and you have to choose one dimension. You have to say, okay, we want to work on the dimension of ICTs, the dimension of collaboration. We don't want to work on many dimensions, just one. And you're going to design an activity to share in a Google Docs. So let me just go into the slide. Mark is going to share with you the PDF before we go into that, but I'm going to share it here. So you're going to get this PDF, and basically, again, this handout, you're provided with the criteria. So you see that here, you have all the criteria for knowledge construction, collaboration, problem solving, self-regulation, etc. You have all the criteria in the handout. Choose one of the dimensions, and then try to design a task reaching the highest code in the criteria. And you're going to share in a Google Doc. So let me show you the Google Doc very quickly. So this is the Google Doc. You're going to go into the document and just make sure you know what group you're in. If you're in group number 3, you click on group number 3, and then you get a slide. You type your dimension here, and then you also type the task here that you design with your team. Now, ideally, or hopefully, you're going to get one person per group being in charge of writing in this document, because we don't want many people in the same document, because that might generate some problems. And you're going to have 10 minutes. So remember that these breakout rooms are the time in which you can put into practice what we have been talking about, and then maybe you can get some questions for the next part, which is the Q&A, and I'm going to be visiting you. So it's great if you can actually collaborate with one another, generate some discussion, etc. Okay, so Mark?
Yes, and just I'll say something really quickly. Once you go to your breakout room, if you're not sure which room number you're in, you can just look here on the top left. You're going to see yourself on screen here. On the top left corner where it says Zoom meeting, in the top left of your screen, you see that? It'll say group 1 or breakout room 6 or whatever it is, okay? Just so you know which room is yours, and you go to the right place in the document. Also, if you have any doubts about what what to do at all, there's a button that says call for help, and either Jonathan or me or the other Jonathan will rush in there and see what we can do to help you. So make sure you click the link that's in the chat, because sometimes you lose access to that chat once you get into your breakout room. So make sure you've clicked on that link as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms, and let's do it.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for your great work. I went to a couple of groups and I heard people talking and sharing. I know this is not enough time and you probably need more than 10 minutes to agree on a dimension and start working. But I want to share let's see, I want to share this one that I think it's one of the ones that people worked a little bit the longest or the farthest. So this group number 10, they decided on self-regulation, and you see that students are assigned a project in which they have to start their own business, which has to be done in several classes. So you see that it is extended over time. They are provided with a list of the requirements like objective, the mission, the product, which needs to be included in the company. They can choose any type of company and product, and a draft must be submitted to the teacher so that feedback is provided and students get the chance to make any modification to the project. So I really like these ideas because when you see this is very simple. Of course, you can go more into detail like, okay, what vocabulary do we need to know beforehand, or what grammar structures do I need to teach my students, and do we need to practice for them to be able to carry out all of this in English? But this, like being so simple, you can actually go into the rubrics, and let me go to the rubrics, and you can see that all the codes are there. We're talking about a long-term activity. Students are provided with all the goals. They can work, they plan their own work. They have opportunity to revise. So in terms of self-regulation, this is a great activity. This is a great plan. Again, you see that we can start by doing like little things that we include into our lesson plan. And then from there, we expand and we say, okay, now I have the basis for self-regulation. I need to include here and here and there and there. I'm going to continue including more things to get more into detail regarding my teaching. Okay, so thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And now I know it's already 4:30 or 4:33, so it's time for questions. I think somebody has their hand raised, or if you have any questions or comments, I really want to encourage you. I'm going to share in the chat the link for you to open the course for Microsoft. I think it's like 8 or 9 modules. Each module is like 1 hour to complete with videos, information, and they even take you to a OneNote notebook where you have all the information that you need if you want, even sample lessons that you can look at and you can evaluate before you want to before you get into it with your own lessons. Okay, so thank you very much once again, and now the floor is open for questions.
All right, so we're going to take questions either through the chat, comments through the chat, or you can raise your hand or write in the chat, hey, I want to say something, and we can let you open your microphone. So we have Teresa who had her hand up. I hope she still has a comment or question. It might be in regards to the previous slide, and that's totally fine. So Teresa, if you'd like to, you can unmute if I can find out how to allow you to do that. Why is it not working?
You can ask her to unmute and she will be able to unmute.
Yeah, you should be able to unmute now, Teresa, if you wanted to say
now
something.
I could, yeah,
There
thank you. Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you, Jonathan. It was really enlightening. I didn't know about this approach. I really liked it. And I wanted also to tell you that we weren't able to open the Google Doc. So my classmates, my peers and I were discussing about our idea in collaboration, in the collaboration dimension. So I don't know if we could share with you, or we have just short time to do it.
You can share it. Go ahead. No problem.
Yes, Mirna, could you help me, darling, please?
Yes, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. It was a pleasure to work with my colleague. And our idea was based on having a kind of museum. And we were intended to have the students to work in groups in order to organize it. So they were going to work organizing the event, but also getting involved within the presentation of it. So we got that they were working in groups. They shared the responsibility to organize the event, such as inviting the rest of the staff, the students as well, perhaps the younger students, so they can check on it as well. We decided that it was a good idea to provide like a wide range of categories or topics regarding to the same unit, but then they are going to decide about the specific ones that they would like to present or the ones that they feel the most identify with. And eventually they have to research about it and finally to share. And we were also considering the fact that this is an activity that can be adapted to in-site classes as well as virtual environments, depending on the context and the access that our students have to them.
Great. That sounds like a very good idea. When we talk about this, and I can see the codes flowing in that in that lesson that you're proposing, going from code 1 where they work in groups or in small groups, and then sharing responsibility, making substantive decisions. I just wanted to clarify in terms of substantive decisions. We want to allow our students to make decisions in terms of the content that they want to put in terms of the process that they want to undergo, and in terms of the product they want to have at the end. Okay, so the more the merrier. If we can give them opportunity to make decisions on the 3, we give them decisions. I know depending on the level, like I work with elementary school students, first, second graders, I will probably not give them enough decisions to make in terms of the content, but maybe the process or the product that they want to present, right? Or maybe not the process that much because they need more guidance, but I'm giving them substantive decisions in terms of the product. Do you want to present it with a poster? Do you want to, I don't know, create a role play, or do you want to do something else? Like, I'm open to your suggestions. And then we move one code further, even though I cannot do that with all the different decisions that are available. But great, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
So waiting on some more questions, but we had an interesting comment here from Jose Raul saying, really useful. What I like about the theory is that we might focus on one area at a time, and the codes help us have like a sequence that we might follow depending on what we want and the population that we have.
Yes, thank you, Jose Raul, for that comment. And I might add to that what I like is that here we are teaching our students the different skills they need in a very subtle way. We're not telling them this is collaboration, this is what is it? This is knowledge, this is real world problem solving. No, we're asking them to do things, and by doing, they are learning and they are interiorizing or internalizing the different skills that they need to have in the end.
Okay, so before passing the mic on to some participants that want to say something, my partner Catherine has been posting some links there. Please help us out by completing the feedback survey. We always like to know how you feel about these talks, and of course we also share the results directly with Jonathan, our speaker, so that they get some feedback on how you felt about the talk, and of course the links there to join our community of practice as well. Neil, if you'd like to say something.
Yeah, I'd like about an hour to say it. I mean, Jonathan, the presentation was wonderful. Thank you very much. It was really a lot of food for thought. But there were a couple of times during it that the same idea kept kind of recurring to me, and it recurs to me a lot when we're talking about education and changing what we do in the classroom and so on. It particularly struck me during that 6-minute video where the guy was kind of condemning the old-fashioned schooling and recommending the new. And it also came to mind when the woman from Microsoft was there and so on. And I can't help wondering, you know, we all know the evils and the inappropriateness of the kind of 19th century schooling model that we have, that we continue to use in all sorts of ways. And we also know the cost of replacing it and the expense to a society to change its educational delivery. But you know, a lot of the work that, when I had the opportunities to work in Central America, I was constantly coming back to the States and saying to people, I just love this concept they have in Latin America about valores, that valores are super important. And, you know, yes, the values that were communicated in the older system, in the traditional educational system, were not ones that we might want in hindsight to communicate. And we certainly might not want to communicate them all now. But I have a kind of a worry that when the decisions about how teaching is done and what is taught are hugely influenced by global capitalism and by global enterprises, that are we just allowing somehow things that are important in education to fall by the wayside? And here I'm thinking about kind of valores. I'm thinking about ethics. I'm thinking about social kind of engagement. I'm thinking of how to make a livable society for people and so on. Now, I agree, and I think you could rightly jump back and say to me, well, in the communications pieces or in the collaboration pieces, in the skills, we're certainly working on some of those. But I kind of have a fear that if we become too swamped in the kind of model that you were describing for us today, that there is a risk of other things being lost unless we catch them and insert them in some other way. And a final comment would be that, you know, autonomizing learners. I mean, I do this teacher training a lot as well, so I'm kind of, it's part of my bread and butter, and sometimes I feel like I should go on a diet from it. But some of the liberty we give students to self-assess or to decide on their own learning outcomes and so on reminds me too of the kind of stupidity of the kind of people who follow Donald Trump and his like, and think that their own research on Google for 5 minutes is as important as a canon of scientific or intellectual or philosophical knowledge that it has taken humanity thousands of years to develop. Okay, I know I went way beyond ESL, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what I said. And sorry for the length of time it took me to say it.
No problem. Thank you very much. That is actually really interesting. And I must say, I agree to a certain extent that we need to be careful with what we are allowing. I mean, I grew up in an educational system with those valores that you're mentioning, and a lot of discipline and a lot of following certain orders and doing things that we also need to do in our daily lives. Like when I go to work at a company, they have their policies and I have to follow those policies, whether I like them or not. Sometimes they don't give me that chance to decide, do you want to wear an uniform today or not? You just have to, because that's kind of the policy, right? But what I think is that we can give students more power in certain aspects where we can. Like, for example, those decisions, like what do you like? Do you like to, do you prefer writing or do you prefer reading or speaking in this case? Do you prefer to present this in a certain way or in another? Giving objectives to students is, we're telling students you need to be responsible for your own learning. And at some point you're going to be creating your own objectives in lives. But right now, these are the objectives. And it's important that you have this clear before you embark on any activity or any journey in your life, to have clear objectives, and then from there start the self-regulation process, right? So yes, I totally agree that it's a risk, but we can actually keep those valores in certain aspects, but also making our students the center of the learning process, and not being like, I don't like I don't like it to be called the teaching learning process. It's like two different processes. So I am I am in charge of the teaching and the guidance, but I want my learners to be in charge of their learning processes and constructing their own learning.
Thanks for that. Yeah, it's I'm not sure why I was saying what I was saying beyond trying to clarify it in my own mind, really. But and maybe we're getting a mutual clarification collaboratively. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right.
David?
Thanks,
There you
Mark.
go.
And thanks, Neil. That really made me think for a while as you're talking. It was just this whole other like mind running through that. Jonathan, thank you. Another great PD talk you put together. I had come across 21 CLD before, glanced at it briefly and thought, maybe it's not for me. But you really put it into another light, and I'm very thankful for that. I had a question about in the beginning, you talked about the teachers using rubrics on themselves or on their lesson plans. Is that what the codes are? And if so, is there some like curated websites or stuff where teachers who find that they're coming up with a lot of, say, code 3 on problem solving can go to get ideas, help, that sort of stuff?
Well, to the first question, yes, the idea is that these criteria that we're using, or these rubrics, these codes, are for my activities. Like I, as a teacher, I'm going to use it. And then I have my lesson plan and I say, okay, in this lesson plan, are my students going to do this? Yes or no? I go to code 2 or code 3, and then I can make decisions and I can make changes and adaptations to my lesson plan so that I can go higher into the codes. And to the second question, I'm afraid I haven't found any of those websites yet. Again, I came across this very recently and I got really interested on it. I started reading and all that, but now you have given me some homework, because I really want to see if there is a community of practice out there where we can actually tell people like, you know what, I have this lesson plan. I don't know how I can actually get it into a higher level in terms of collaboration. Can you help me out, or how do I do it, right? But I'm going to look for that. But my answer to that question so far is no, I don't have any.
Well, we're getting close to 5 o'clock Costa Rica time. And so I want to take this opportunity to invite all of you to share your thanks with Jonathan for his presentation today, either through your camera, waving your hands, or writing some message there in the chat. Thank you very much, Jonathan. This is now the second PD Talk, and I think you've also helped us with 2 national conference presentations that we have recorded. So if you want more from Jonathan or any sessions that he's given in the past that we have recordings of, you can check out our Community of Practice website. Also want to let you know that our next talk is going to be in about 3 weeks, and it's going to be by Julio Valladares from Peru, talking about motivation in times of COVID, motivation regarding students and also regarding teachers. So you won't want to miss that. And of course, you'll be getting an official invitation through email and also in our social media coming up. So thank you very much. Please take a moment to give us and Jonathan some feedback in that very brief feedback survey link. And we'll leave the room open for another couple of minutes in case you want to continue sharing anything, or if you have any questions for Jonathan or for us. So again, thank you, everybody. And thank you very much, Jonathan.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Jonathan, could I ask another question?
Sure.
In terms of let's say you've got your codes as almost a rubric for the teacher in checking the levels of whatever category you want to reach and so on. In terms of what is provided, what is delivered by the students, the assessment of that, the evaluation of that, whether it's like formative or summative, it doesn't really matter. Is there something associated with this approach that has its own set of kind of assessment rubrics, or is that something you need to do yourself to determine the standards that students must reach in order to get a grade A or a grade B or a grade C or whatever?
I haven't come across any rubrics for the students, but because the model itself, it's regarding the teaching part.
Yes, yes,
You improving your teaching and changing your teaching. But I would say that what I would do is in certain parts, I can actually take the rubric for the teacher and make it a rubric for the students. Like in the part of collaboration, for example, I can add in the rubric of the collaboration, do we have interdependence
exactly.
as
Yes,
individuals or as a group?
Yeah.
Or like we can have all of that for them to self-assess more
Yeah.
than me assessing themselves, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, the benefits of rubrics. They can self-assess with them to a certain extent. Yeah. Thanks for that.
All right, everyone. I'm going to post the links one more time just in case you haven't clicked them. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you back here in a couple of weeks. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a
Bye-bye.
nice weekend, everyone.